There have been moments, I think for many of us, all of us, when we have heard about accusations against someone that we find ourselves desperately wanting not to believe. Whether that is because we have some personal admiration for the individual or their work, or political admiration, someone on our quote-unquote side. But part of the difficult lesson of the Me Too era is not that every accusation is true and everything should be believed on its face, but that you do have to fight yourself when you feel that impulse. You have to do that in order to take seriously what is being alleged and what the evidence is and to evaluate it. And that is the case with the accusation by a woman named Tara Reade against Joe Biden.
That was MSNBC primetime host Chris Hayes doing something that apparently shocked and stunned and horrified much of the MSNBC audience, which is to actually, roughly 30 days too late, by the way, cover the allegations of Tara Reade against Joe Biden. Yeah. We covered earlier how yesterday was a bit of a tipping point for the media. Suddenly you saw the Washington Post editorial board call on Biden to respond. You saw a flurry of reporting. You saw the New York Times obviously very unhappy with the Biden campaign and the fact that they lied about the New York Times reporting and said that it disproved the allegations. And this, to my knowledge, is the first segment that has occurred on MSNBC about these allegations, and the audience, Saagar, freaked out.
They were not happy about this one, Krystal. So Fire Chris Hayes was trending on Twitter yesterday.
For him covering a news
Just
story.
Covering the news story. We see Chris Hayes. This is hundreds of retweets. Chris Hayes has been a third-rate reporter. He has a poor excuse. MSNBC should have never brought him on board. Well, that's the last time I watched Chris Hayes. They are to blame for the election of Donald Trump. I can go on and on and on. Well, I see Chris Hayes.
To blame for Donald Trump, but for not the reason they think.
You'll love this. Chris Hayes has gone from swift boating to her emails to Tara Reade. All were BS. All were to destroy Democrats. More and more and more. I am 100% fire Chris Hayes. He won't act professional. Not once did he properly cover Bernie Sanders. He's a fan, not a journalist. I think I'll be news to some of the Bernie Sanders people who watch this show. I mean, that's particularly funny.
Look, Chris, I worked with Chris and I know him, and he came out of the left of the party, right? He was a writer at The Nation. Like, he was, his parents were active. Like, he comes from that part of the party. In this era with Trump, he has followed, the rabbit hole of Russiagate. He's done most of the stuff that you're supposed to do. I will say that of all of the anchors there, I think he was the most fair to Bernie Sanders. Not to say that he was like perfect on that front, but he was probably the most fair. But it is outrageous that not even dissent, like even just mentioning that this story exists. It's not like he even took Tara's side and said this happened or I believe her. Things that he likely said about Christine Blasey Ford and other accusers, right? So he just literally covers the story. But it again goes to show you the MSNBC audience in particular, and a lot of the sort of liberal base, has come to see journalists' job as covering for the Democratic establishment. Like, truly, like that is actually how they see you as doing your job effectively, is how well you bash Trump and cover for the Democratic establishment or cheerlead for them or whatever. And so if you even talk about a story that is inconvenient for them, they want you fired. It's
crazy, and it's deranged. And again, this is actually the Democratic Party base, and these are the people who they really want to realign things even more so, these uptick in suburban voters. These are the things that they care about, and they're the ones who will look at the Hillary Clinton email story or the Tara Reade story implicitly in political terms and say that you're only covering this in order to hurt Joe Biden. They refuse any countenance of critical reporting on him whatsoever. And this is just how it's going to be for the time being. And it shows, why did it take 30 days for these people to even cover it? This is why.
Right. And that's exactly right, because of the backlash from not just the establishment elite figures, but also from these people, #resistance folks on Twitter. And they see it very clearly when it's on the other side, when there's this like mindless following of Trump, and whatever Trump does is
Fox
good.
News.
And Fox News and how they
tell you everything Fox does.
Yeah, and look, like that criticism is legitimate, but they are completely blind to the fact that they're here on the other side doing the exact same thing for Joe Biden and the Democratic Party. I think it's really stunning. I mean, it's a sort of like authoritarian instinct that if you can just ignore this story completely, it will just go away. And that if a journalist even talks about it, then, oh, they want Trump to win.
Right.
They're helping Trump win. They must love Trump. Or maybe they're in Putin's pocket, right? They're doing the bidding of the Kremlin or whatever. I mean, people really go to that insane place like this just for a journalist literally covering a major national news story.
Yeah, and it just shows you what they created this environment. They created and ginned up all this resistance stuff by covering Russians influencing the U.S. energy grid, all these debunked stories, Mueller, on and Gazprom, and they can go all the way down the line. This is a result. I mean, he created this beast, and he has to deal with it
And
now.
how can you call yourself a news organization when this took... I want to give Chris credit for at least covering it.
He's the only one who done it.
At least he covered it.
Right.
But it's really late. It's really late. And, you know, it's treated, you know, in a very kid gloves kind of way. It's certainly not the same treatment of, you know, sexual assault allegations against other major figures. I do think he did it in sort of honest and transparent way of you have to fight yourself. I think that's an important message to put out there. But yeah, that coverage resulted in the massive outrage and pushback on Twitter that we saw is pretty telling.
There you go.
We'll have more Rising for you after this.